Hello and welcome to this session on Neurodiversity in the Book World, part of Paisley Book Festival's online offering for this year's event. Paisley Book Festival is now in its fourth year and is made possible by the vital support of Creative Scotland and Future Paisley, which is a radical and wide-ranging programme of events, activity and investment using the town's unique and internationally significant cultural story to transform its future. The theme of this year's festival is Remake and Rebel, which encapsulates the spirit of regeneration taking place in Paisley and reflects on the power of the written word and storytelling as an important tool of rebellion during challenging times. In a first for Paisley Book Festival, the majority of events will allow those attending to pay what they can in recognition of the cost of living crisis. We very much appreciate the support you've shown for the festival by coming along today. However, if you are in a position to donate, help us put on more events like this and support reading and writing in Renfrewshire, please visit paisleybookfest.com and click the donate button at the top of the homepage. Please shout about the festival to all your friends and family. Word of mouth is so powerful. If you're on social media, give us a follow at Book Paisley on Twitter and at Paisley Book Fest on Instagram, and a mention with the hashtag PBF2023. I'm Michael Lee Richardson, and I'm delighted to be joined by two fantastic writers for this discussion event. Gray Crosby is a queer writer and spoken word poet based in Glasgow. They perform regularly at poetry and cabaret nights around Scotland and work with BBC The Social to create short poetry films. Their pamphlet of flash fiction, Love Pan-Fried, was published in 2019 by Knight Errant Press. Eli Percy is an award-winning Scottish writer, best known for their novel Duck Feet. Their first publication was a letter in Big Magazine in 1994. Since then, they've released a memoir, Cracked, contributed many stories to literary journals, and published two novels, Vicky Romeo plus Jules in 2019 and Duck Feet in 2021. Hello, Gray and Eli.
Hello.
Hi. So the term neurodivergent can be a bit of a slippery one. It can be hard to define, and different people have different meanings. So what does it mean for you? Let's go with Gray first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the term neurodivergent because I think I've got different neurodivergencies. So I love that it's this kind of catch-all word, which, I don't always need to get into exactly what it is that I have at certain points. And I think also it kind of brings us all together, in a nice way. I mean, for me, I'm dyslexic and dysgraphic. So that's, yeah, they're kind of big ones for me. I also have BPD or EUPD, I think it's usually diagnosed as now. And I also have other neurodivergencies, I'm sure, which aren't diagnosed. Yeah, so for me, it's a really nice term just to kind of quickly get across that the way my brain works is slightly different to the way a lot of other people's brains work. Yeah.
How about you, Eli?
Yeah, I can't remember when I found the term neurodivergent. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And I think a lot of times if you say that you have a disability, people are looking for a sort of physical, a physical disability or blindness, or they're looking for something that they can see. But saying that you're neurodivergent, people automatically thought, oh, okay, there's maybe not going to be a secondary disability there that I can I can look at and understand. I had a brain injury when I was 14 in 1992, and I was diagnosed with retrograde, antegrade, and post-traumatic amnesia, as well as a whole array of sort of outwardly subtle cognitive impairments. And that was a long time ago, and we have moved on from then, and things are a wee bit better. I meet people that are autistic, people that have got ADHD, and I can see there are crossover things that that folks struggle with or are brilliant at as a result of their neurodivergence. That that I maybe never have known before if we hadn't had this this umbrella term.
It feels like the term neurodivergence to me as well, Eli, you said just before we started recording that this is kind of a 2-for-1 queer panel slash neurodivergent panel. But it feels that there are some similarities with the term queer for me, because it feels like a term that the community uses to refer to itself rather than something from outside. And it feels like it kind of marries the social model and the medical model together a bit neater.
I think for me, I think after years of with brain injury, the sort of assumption or the portrayal of people with brain injury was that you would maybe have a difficulty with speech, or that you or that people would just think that you were, not very bright was the way, and people would talk down to me, or would talk really slow, and I thought, oh, for God's sake, I don't have a hearing impairment. You haven't even asked me what I might have difficulty with. But the term neurodivergent, to me, it seemed almost like it was just like my brain works differently from the average person. So that's why I liked it.
Eli, we talked a little bit earlier before this to say, but you mentioned your memoir, Cracked. Did you want to talk a little bit about that? That's a quite old now. That book.
20 years. Yeah. It was 20 years old, and December 2002. November or December 2002. It was originally supposed to come out a little bit earlier than that, and then it got changed. So end of 2002. Sounds ancient. And at that time, I hadn't really read anything about brain injury before, really. It was published by Jessica Kingsley publishers. It wasn't meant to be for publication. It was just, I was going to college. When I was 19, I'd gone to college, and my tutor was saying, like, it's a lot of tutors will say to you, oh, write a story about your childhood, and I went, well, I can't do that because I can't remember mine. And took the huff fully, and he was just like, well, why don't you write about what it was like to not be able to remember? So I started writing about myself, wrote a couple of different stories, stopped because it got too hard, picked it back up a little bit later, but it was only supposed to be for cathartic reasons. And then another tutor had said, oh, have you read Nobody Nowhere, which is a memoir of an autistic girl, and you should send your book to this publisher. And I was so taken by Donna Williams's book that I thought, well, actually maybe I will then. If it's going to help somebody else, then maybe that is a useful thing to do. And at that time, Jessica Kingsley publishers were the only ones that I'd seen who were kind of publishing books buying about neurodivergent people.
I think it's the buy part that is important in that as well. Like, there's a lot of I feel like we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I feel like there's a lot of people writing about neurodivergency, or traditionally has been writing about neurodivergency, who aren't themselves neurodivergent, which I think I have thoughts on, but we'll share those later on. So what is we've covered this a little bit, but what is your own experience with neurodivergency been? Gray, if you want to chime in.
I mean, I think to begin with, it was before getting a diagnosis with anything, it was just knowing that I was struggling with things, and knowing or suspecting I was different. You know, you don't know, like, surely does everyone else think like this? Does everyone not? And then I think it was a lot of kind of realizing that I was a bit different to my peers. And everyone else wasn't really struggling with this. And then it was kind of getting the diagnosis, which was really difficult because I struggled in school, but I also did quite well still. So no one was interested in testing me for dyslexia because I did well enough, essentially, and I was like a well-behaved child. So it wasn't until I was at uni that I got tested. And I'm really glad I did, because I think otherwise trying to get a diagnosis as an adult can be a really long, rubbish process. So then being diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia was it's kind of that weird experience because like it's hard taking on a new label, but it's also something really kind of empowering in it because it's like, now it makes sense. There's people like me, and it's not just that I'm stupid and that I'm just really bad at spelling. It's, it's because of this. There's a reason for it. And I think, yeah, that was like a really, yeah, kind of empowering thing, I guess. And then, kind of from there, it's like been trying to figure out what like works for me as a neurodivergent person. And like I'm pretty sure I have like other neurodivergencies that aren't, that haven't been diagnosed. Like I really struggle with like, executive dysfunction and like sensory differences, and all my siblings are autistic and or have ADHD. So like, and I'm very like them. So, I'm pretty sure there's more going on there. I feel like a lot of it still try to figure out what works for me and like how I think and, what doesn't work, and kind of breaking down this idea that, if, this works for everyone and this works for writers and this is a good thing for writers to do and it's not working for me, then maybe like that's okay. And I need to do this slightly differently, and that's fine, and not to give myself a hard time for that. So yeah, I still feel like I'm still figuring out like how my brain works best and how to best write and best do things, and it definitely feels very like ongoing for me still.
Yeah, I can really I can relate to a lot of that story. I think in a slightly similar way. So I have dyspraxia, and sort of all the way through school, I was like I mean, I think there was a lot of other stuff going on before we got to dyspraxia, but all the way through school, I was sort of clumsy. And then when I went to uni, I did. I went to Strathclyde, and you had to do like 5 different sort of taster courses before your first year, and I did a history course, and my essays were really good, but like anything else where I was sort of on the spot was really bad. And it was because I thought of it as I couldn't remember dates, but it's that I couldn't dyspraxia is about spatial awareness, and that also affects like how I order information. So if I'm sitting and writing an essay, I can sort of do that for myself, whereas if I'm put on the spot, so I got diagnosed when I was in uni as well, and got a nice bunch of kit from the disability support services, which was really great.
What's okay I didn't read as well. I was talking to someone recently about this, and how sometimes they quite often just give you all the same kind of stuff, even though some people don't need that. So I got some really useful things, and I got some totally not useful things. Like they gave me a computer and a printer, which was great, but not a laptop. So it was kind of like I was really like limited to like working, and like the software I was given was just for this computer, so I was just limited to this computer. But like I wanted to go work in the library, because for me sitting working at home is really difficult. I need to like go out and be in a different place, or else I get distracted. So actually it didn't help in a lot of ways, because then I was stuck home at this desk where I couldn't need to write. And yeah, there was a mixed thing. Some of it was really helpful, and some was like, this isn't actually tailored, seems very generic, just like
I feel like this is
what you get.
I feel like this is really aging me, but I got a mini disc player when I was don't really know why, don't know what it was for, but it did have Tattoo's album on mini discs. It came in very useful. How about you, Eli? What kind of what's your experience of neurodivergency been?
Oh God, you're talking about having a mini disc player. I can actually beat that. I got a laptop by Amstrad.
Oh wow!
Did you know that Amstrad went into supported learning and began making laptops with special keys on them, and phones, and for people with hearing impairments?
I did not know that.
I
That's
did not until a village support teacher told me that. So I got this laptop. I don't really think that I was supposed to. I don't know if I should say this or not. I don't think they'd expected me to accidentally hack the laptop. All you had to do was press escape a couple of times. And I had this book of coding that was in ZX Spectrum, but I took a computing class in school, and I managed to transfer it over to BASIC for Amstrad, and wrote of the tarot card program I wrote, and I burnt the laptop out.
that also feels like where queerness and neurodivergency
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm
to
terrible with
tarot
computers
card.
now because the guidance teacher actually, I went into school one day and she said that I'd been dropped out of the computing class. Actually, that was the first high school, but I'd been dropped out of the computing class, and Mum said, "Well, why are you taking Eli at this class?" And she's just like, "Well, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see which subjects the students are going to excel in." And I'm like, "But I like computing. I'm good at computing. Why am I still in French? I can't say any of the words. I don't have any vocabulary." Yeah, high school was quite a mixed bag for me. I had some brilliant teachers and some teachers who didn't understand at all. But funnily enough as well, you're talking about dyspraxia. I went to rehab for brain injury rehab, and you couldn't go until you were 18 because there was nothing for kids under the age of 18. And the occupational therapist there did various things with me, and she said, I think you're actually dyspraxic. And I'm like, all right. I mean, I've got a laundry list of like neurodivergencies I didn't need anymore. And she's just like, I think we should get you tested for dyspraxia. I'm going to get you referred. So I got this referral, and I was told I had to be on a waiting list for, I think it was 54 weeks. And
Oh, wow.
let's say I was maybe 18 at the time. Because you had to be 18 to go to rehab. So I'm going to say at least 18. And I went and I waited 54 weeks. And then they turned around and they said to me that I was actually too old for the diagnosis.
Oh, no.
I was just like, what?
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, you're too old now, but we can give you counselling to support you. And like, and I'm like, well, counselling for what? By now, I've Googled dyspraxia. I've tried all the different things that folk are saying is useful. So whether or not I'm dyspraxic, it doesn't really matter because I've picked up some tips.
I think that's the interesting thing as well, that they often come in pairs or in like groups of neurodivergencies. It's often not one or another. Do you think Yeah, and there is so much crossover in what's helpful for people and what's not helpful for people, and how it kind of affects them. Do you think being neurodivergent has affected your writing? Either of you. I'll let whoever speaks first.
Well, I can't visualize things. I mean, I had a test done years ago, visual and verbal memory tests, and they're like, well, visual memory, we kind of expected this. I can't remember what things look like. It was like much lower than, they gave you pictures of like, you get a picture of four houses on it, and then they turned the page and there was one house and you had to say which one of the four houses it was and stuff like that. And I wouldn't have a clue. I'd be like, just guess. Actually, it was one picture of one house, you turned the page and there's four houses and you had to say which was the house you just seen. And I'd be like that, yeah. So, but they did test me on verbal memory, and they said that I was right off the chart the other way. I mean, I can remember like lists of street names and stuff like that, but I can't see them. I don't know what they look like, but I could list them. I can tell you my first house where I lived, all the streets are named after locks, and I can rhyme off every single street, and I can tell you what's parallel to that. But it's not a picture in my head. I couldn't really draw your map.
That, for me though, that what chimes for me in that is like knowing you and knowing your work. Like your work is so full of characters and you know them. I always think that's like you just know them all, and you.
It's all verbal and it's all oral stuff. It's like I kind of went away from the question there, didn't I? If I'm sitting in a bus and Betty's on the bus and she's talking to Jeannie, and like I can hear their conversation, and then I can get off the bus and I can carry on their conversation, just imagining what they'd say next, because I've got their voices in my head now, and I could just carry it on. And that's a lot of, that's how I write a lot of the time. It's came from the seed of an idea. Somebody said something. With my first novel, I actually sat in a pub, for a year, and just watched people, and folk will say, oh, who are the characters really? And I'm like, nobody. But if you went to that pub and you think that you think that something in that book is something you said. It may well have been, but it won't have been what you were. It'll have been taken out of context. It will not have been the original conversation. I'll just have heard a phrase, and I've just run with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting, and it's an interesting process, I think, as well, that like being in a space to do the work thing is. How about you, Gray? How has being neurodivergent affected your writing?
Oh, are we talking a good way or a bad way?
It could be both. It could be both. It's positive and negative.
I think there's definitely positives, like especially doing spoken word. So like obviously I love poetry. I love going to spoken word nights, but I really struggle to process auditory language. Sometimes much more than like reading it on the page. So like audiobooks are a nightmare for me. I can only listen to audiobooks if I've already read the book.
Oh wow.
Which kind of works because like me and my wife will listen to audiobooks at bedtime, so I can like pick a book that I've loved and then share it with her, because she's also dyslexic, but like is the other way around. She cannot read like on the page at all, but enjoys audiobooks. So yeah, when I go to like poetry nights and stuff like that, sometimes like there's certain poets I can like listen to and I can stay with the poem like most of the way through, but like quite often I just can't, like in the time it takes to process what I've just heard, they're already so far on, and then I end up just like lost, and I feel like I've just got no footing sometimes when I'm listening to spoken word, which is really frustrating. But then I think it's in some way been good, because it's something I'm always really conscious of when it comes to writing, and like trying to do what I can to help the listener get from like start to end and help them stay focused, and give them wee kind of footholds, like using things like shouting or silence, or like varying pace and repetition, and things that I know help me, I then like put into my writing, which I think like then is like that kind of a struggle is like then a positive. And like, because one of my favorite things like after a gig is if someone comes up and says like, oh, I don't usually like poetry, I'm not a poetry fan, but I like that. And that's like one of my absolute favorite like compliments. I know someone who would normally say, oh yeah, I don't like poetry, to then like it. Like yeah, that's one of my kind of favorite compliments. So I think that kind of experience is like kind of then I think helped my writing in a way. And I also think in terms of like I struggle to focus, but then I'm also really good at hyper focusing. So if I'm interested in something, like I can like once I'm zoned in, I could go days like or hours and hours and hours on end, and just really get stuck in and work away, which can be really useful. Because if I'm excited about something, I can focus great, and I'll come out of it like 6 hours later and I realise it's dark outside and I'm bursting on a pee and I've not eaten dinner. Dogs. But then I get like loads of work done in this like intense space of time, which can be really useful. But then there's definitely a lot of negatives to being neurodivergent and a writer for me. I mean, the dyslexia is like, it's a nightmare, like writing and dyslexia. So things like obviously like spelling and like typos, and I can like never guarantee what I'm sending off doesn't have typos in it, and that's been like problematic, I found, like quite often, because like editors and magazines and things will say like proofread your work, and you hear that if they've found one typo they might forgive you, but by the second one they've chucked your submission out, which when you're dyslexic is just like, that's impossible. Like, I know there's no way I'm going to catch all the spelling mistakes, all the typos, unless I paid for a proofreader, which I can't afford to do. So I think that's like always a kind of major disadvantage, being a dyslexic writer. It also just takes me like longer to do things like emails, because I need to proofread them and proofread them. I mean, like focusing as well. So if I'm not hyper focusing, forcing myself to focus to write, it's really difficult. Like, it's so difficult. And I feel like I'm now learning like things that help me and ways to get me focused. But like, it can be a challenge, because like sometimes writing is fun, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is just like it's hard and boring, and you just got to force yourself to sit down and do the thing. And when my brain doesn't want to, it is like an absolute battle. I need to like trick it into it. And it's not even like I can reward myself with something nice afterwards, because I'm a terrible boss, because I'm just like, but I can have the thing now. Like, it's right there. I can just order pizza now. So yeah, I've definitely found things that help. But yeah, I think the focus is a really kind of difficult one. And like, yeah, I mean, I think it affects in like lots of ways. And it
I
varies.
think it can sometimes be in like ways that you don't even realize as well.
Yeah.
Like when I kind of wrote that question, I was like, what are the things that, how does it affect me? Because I'm the main character of the universe, obviously. But I was like, as a dyspraxic person, like I think, like sort of sorting through information can be really difficult for me. So I think I'm bad at structure, but because I think I'm bad at structure, I really cling to structure, and I like really like do it. And whenever anybody's got like, I've got like every sort of, I've got loads of notes and loads of screenshots on my phone that are like anybody talking about structure and that kind of thing. So I think it does make you like, I guess, more aware of your you know, of things that you need to work on or that you need to be aware of. The other thing that I kind of didn't even realize until a couple of years ago, I read an article, and I can't remember the journalist's name, but it was she was talking about being dyspraxic and finding it difficult to modulate the volume of her voice. Like I sometimes don't know if I'm like shouting really loud or if I'm talking really, like I just don't know if it's happening. And I can find that I do a lot of writers' rooms, so that can be quite interesting. I often feel like I go away from them and people are either like, well, you were really quiet, or
Maybe the whole time.
full of yourself. Oh well. Just thinking about neurodivergent writers that we might have in the audience, is there anything you use that you think is helpful when you're writing?
Do you want me to go? I feel like I've got stuff here.
Cool, yeah, you've got stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what kind of neurodivergency you're talking about, obviously. So for like dyslexia, like obviously spell check is your best friend, you know, Grammarly, you know. To help me catch like spelling mistakes and typos, I use like text to speech software. So I'll just copy whatever I've written and paste it into I just use a website, I think it's called Natural Readers or something, and I just paste it in there, and then it reads what you've written back to you, which I find like the best thing for catching spelling mistakes and typos. And I miss out whole words a lot of the time, or I'll write words the wrong way around. The worst one is like when it's like can't or don't, or it's the that I always miss out, so which completely changes the meaning of the sentence I've tried to write. So yeah, I find like text to speech is like super helpful. That like really works for me. When it comes to like focus things, like in doing the work, because like executive dysfunction is definitely something I really struggle with. I need to always like plan out like what I'm doing, so I've actually got like a clear plan, because if I just go into it like I'm going to do the things, I need to first break down what all those steps are, and then try and like minimize distractions. So like I have an app on my phone, I think it's called Forest, where it stops you accessing your other apps, and it gives you a time, and in this time it starts planting a tree or another plant in your forest, and if you go into one of these like forbidden apps, in that time your plant dies, which you don't
No.
it really like forces you to not touch the other apps, but you can like let it access certain apps. Of course, like my notes and like Word and whatever, like I could access them if I needed to. You have like allowed apps, but I find that really good for stopping that kind of procrastination, or because sometimes I even just think I'm going to go into my phone and just look up something quickly, but like, you know what happens, you get distracted and I forget what I'm there for, and now, you know, I've been like just scrolling for Instagram for the past like hour. Like it's so easily done. So yeah, I find that app really helpful. I also use like timers, I find for me are really good. So sometimes it's like a timer for the procrastination, like you have 10 minutes of this and then that's your time done. Or even if it's something like I don't want to do, I just think, right, I'm going to say a 20-minute timer, you know, we're going to sit down and, you know, look at this poem or redraft this or do this email or whatever. And sometimes it's just to getting started. So if I know I've only got to do it for a wee bit, it's fine, that's manageable. And then once I'm into it, actually, I can now do this for an hour or 2 hours, because like the getting started is quite hard for me. So yeah, I find like using timers. I used to just use like timers on my phone, and then I realized that I struggle to kind of visualize time in some ways. So I got like a visual timer. In fact, I've got one here. So I got like a visual timer that you can set like an actual time. So
Oh,
you
that's
can see
cool.
how much time's left, and then it's gonna ring when it goes down. Yeah. You can just see in front of you like how much time's remaining. Like I found that like super helpful. And like listening to like brown noise or like rain sounds or something like that, I find helps to keep me focused and stops me get distracted by sounds. I'm not someone who can like write to music. Like I can't, my brain cannot process like two things at once like that. Even like instrumental music, my brain's just far too distracted. If it's something like like brown noise or rain or the fire crackling, that I find really helpful. These are all things that like I don't know, these work for me. I don't know if they'll work for other people, but
No, I think it's just about giving people sort of ideas, I guess, as well.
I find a new thing that works. I'm like, oh my gosh, this helps. That's really helping with this issue. And like, why has no one told me this? And I'm always like searching for new like ways and new ideas, like people when people share online. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try that. And then when it works, it's great, because it feels like I'm just constantly trying to unlock the best way to write and to be productive with this brain.
My like two things from that. My thing that very much doesn't work for me is I every sort of 3 weeks will like try to get hold of that executive dysfunction, and like I have to get an app and stuff like that. And I always go on I end up downloading Trello and forgetting that I've ever had it before, and then looking back at the whole suite of boards that I've made with to-do lists on them. But what's quite nice about that is you look at them and it's like, I've done all that stuff now. That's all in the past. But the very rudimentary version of that Forest app, when I have had to get like chunks of writing done like in a specific period of time, is a website called Written Kitten, and it gives you put in how many words you want to write, and it gives you a picture of a kitten every 200 words or something. It's like,
that sounds amazing. I would write for the kitten. I like the sound of that. I think the other thing as well is like just leaning into what you know works as well, because like you see writing advice, like write 1,000 words a day or do this, do that, and successful writers do this, and I've tried to do these things and it's just like I've utterly failed, and I think I'm just a failure as a writer. But then I realized actually this doesn't work for me, and this probably doesn't work for a lot of other neurodivergent people. So like knowing, like once I like figure out the ways that it does work for me, like I try not give myself a hard time for working like that. Like I'm someone who's like super motivated by deadlines. If I don't have a deadline, like it's not happening. Like it's really not. But now, and I always like leave things still to like the last minute, but now I just plan like my writing around that, and I try not to give myself a hard time. Like if I've got an application during this date, I know if I gave myself a week, I'm going to spend 6 days not working on it, beating myself up, panicking, and then do it in one day. So now I'm just like, do you know what, I'm not even going to plan to do that until the very last minute, and then I know when I get to it, my brain is going to focus, it's going to be able to do the thing, and I'll get it done without all the procrastinating beforehand, and it gives me this other time to work on things, or even just relax and not be just stressing the full time. So when it comes to it, I've got like the energy and the headspace to just do the thing. But it's like trying not to give myself a hard time for working in that way, because it feels so backwards, and I can hear all my teachers in my head saying, don't leave it to the last minute, don't leave it to the last minute. But it's just, that's what works for me, and I just try and kind of lean into that now and be okay with it.
I think that's really important advice, like leaning into what works for you. There's so much sort of writing advice that is sort of handed down from on high, like it's the 10 Commandments, and you just do what works for you and leave everything else. How about you, Eli? What about, is there anything you use to help you with your writing?
I'm really contrary, because it turns out that as much as I hate not having a routine, I also hate having a routine. I've discovered that routines 4, 6 weeks, and 12 weeks really worked for me. But I was using the Pomodoro technique. I started using that a couple of months ago. I thought I'll just try it. It's you write for 25 minutes, you stop for 5 minutes, you write for 25, you stop for 5, you write for 25, you stop for 5, you write for 25, you stop for 17, you write for 25, you stop for 5, you write for 25 again. That's you don't do it any more than 6 Pomodoros. And really weirdly, it really worked for me. Just 25 minutes of focus, and then 5 minutes where you really don't have time to wander off and do anything else. Just go to the toilet, get a drink, but you've not got any time to get distracted in anything. So that was great. And the 17 minutes I was making myself a sandwich, and so that really worked until one day I got up and it just didn't. And I don't know why it just didn't, but it had been 6 weeks and I was done with it, and that was it. And I just couldn't get it to work anymore. I have discovered I was going for my run in the morning, and then I was doing it, and now I've swapped them round so this week I've started doing the Pomodoros first, the writing first, and then going for my run. And it feels like I'm doing something really it feels like I'm starting a whole brand new project. So I seem to really like structure, but really like variety as well. Yeah.
I think you're always sorry.
I also don't like I don't like isolated noise. I thought I really liked working in cafes, by the way, but it turns out that I actually don't. It was just that the spaces that I've had where I've lived before haven't felt right for reasons. Either it felt too cluttered and closed in for me, or I was, living at home with my parents and they were bustling about and doing their thing. So it turns out that I really just quite like having everything quiet, except when I wrote my first novel and a novella, which had pop music as the backdrop to the novel and the novella. Then I sat in a pub and had all the music. I don't know why that worked, but it did for that novel. And for the novella, I had on kids' TV programs, CBBS, because again that was the background in the novel.
That's quite interesting. On the music front, I always say that I can't write with music, but that is a lie, because I write with one song. Like if I'm working on a project, every project has a song, and I just put that song on and listen to it like over and over again. I didn't realize that on Spotify people can see what you've listened to until my friend texted me being like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm fine." And he was like, "You've listened to Torn by Natalie Imbruglia 40 times today." Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just trying to get myself in a specific space. In terms of representations of neurodivergency, have you read anything that you thought was really, really good or that really worked? I think Eli, you had an example that you were.
I don't know that the author is neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know her. So Robin Hobbs' Farseer books, which there are, I think there are 12 books or there are 9 books. She writes them in trilogies. I think there are 12 now. But there's a character in her books called Thick. Now you're never actually told what Thick's specific neurodivergent condition is, but Thick is just a whole person. He's how to even describe it in the world of this book. The most powerful people are people who have the skill, which is a magic power, but very, very few people have this power. And it's discovered that Thick has the skill, and not only does he have it, but he's better using it than anybody else. But he also doesn't he doesn't understand things in the same way as other people. So you like bribe pick for cakes and stuff. And I just love this, that like you can get him to do stuff where you say, "Do you want a cake?" But he's also not always nice. He's quite petty. And he'll make himself invisible and like push people over and stuff like that. It's like, oh my god, that sounds like me. If I had a magic power and I was invisible and I would tie somebody's laces, that's the height of my sort of wrath, you know. Yeah, I just really, really loved what she did with him. Because he's such a strong character, but he also has flaws, which are to do with, you know, wanting his cake, or you know, or somebody else getting something that he's not got. And I just thought it was great. I hadn't really seen that. I've seen really bad representations that have made me cringe. Yeah, I haven't seen, honestly, I haven't seen a lot, and that might just be down to me having not looked in the right places.
How about yourself, Gray?
You know,
anything that you think's really good?
Thinking of this, and nothing is like really coming to mind, which feels quite like concerning. Like I feel like, you know, I can see myself represented, you know, like, you know, as like a trans person, as like a queer person, and, you know, these sort of things in books. But like I can't really think of anything that I've read where I kind of felt like I could really relate to the character of the story in terms of like neurodivergencies. And in the few books where I've read with neurodivergent characters, I think they have all pretty much been written by neurotypical people, which I have kind of mixed feelings on. Do you know? It's kind of, yeah, I don't know. So yeah, unfortunately, nothing comes to mind. I mean, I'm sure I probably have read something. Nothing's just popping up in my brain. But
Duckfeet has a neurodivergent character.
I know.
I know you read that.
As I always say, I got really excited and bought your book, started it, and then got distracted. I do this like all the time. What's that?
Did your dog not eat it?
Did my dog eat it?
Your dog did eat it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it was Duckfeet. Your dog.
It was Duckfeet. I think it was. Yeah, no, I think it was Duckfeet. Yeah, because I was really gutted because I think she ate the cover or something. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, it's probably sitting like half eaten behind me somewhere. Yeah, I mean that's also a great excuse. My dog ate the book. My dog eats so much. That dog like eats meal. Yeah.
I think I started. I mean, obviously, I've written I'd written Cracked. I'd written a lot about, you know, my own brain injury. But I started writing characters that were neurodivergent because, like, I wasn't seeing them anywhere. And then I think about 2 years ago, I thought, right, that's it. I'm gonna put more people in. I'm gonna put even more people in. And then more recently, I thought, because I just said the characters were neurodivergent and I'd never labelled anything more specific than that. And then I suddenly thought, am I doing people a disservice here? Should I have said they have a brain injury or whatever? So I now started writing characters that have a brain injury. And I've said, you know, I've got a sci-fi story that was in Shoreline of Infinity, and the character in that tells you a story about how they were abducted by aliens 40 years ago, and the aliens, you know, helped them, and because they had fallen and they'd hit their head and they were having different seizures and they were forgetting things, and the aliens abducted them and fixed them, but they still had memory problems after. So it's like, so I've just ruined the ending of the story. But yeah, the character in this one has 2 types of amnesia, and they're like, imagine having 2 types of amnesia. That's shit. But I just thought this was very funny because I've like got 3. But yeah, I pulled on my own experiences, but I also, to my knowledge, have never been abducted by aliens.
And what about the neurodivergent character in Duckfeet?
Yeah, Chris has epilepsy, Again, I haven't gone into like loads of details about you know his background, other than he's a kid who has epilepsy, and he does a talk in school on it, and he talks about things that that his mum's told him not to do. He's been told he can't drink and stuff like that, but then he completely rebels against this in his as he gets older and goes through high school, and he makes some really, really bad choices by drinking alcohol, and what he does when he's drinking alcohol. And it was important to me to have a character that that wasn't a goody, that you know. And so I'm reluctant to say whether I've actually, and I know you know that I've fleshed out his backstory more. I'm reluctant to tell people what I've since done with his story. But there'll be more from Chris in the future, which feels quite exciting.
No, it does. It definitely does to me. But yeah, I do think that thing about not making neurodivergent characters saints and sort of goodies is important. Like so much of what I've read, it's like they're often barely even characters. They're just sort of things that happen to neurotypical people. Yeah. Which is awful.
There was one story that I wrote years ago, and there was this boy, man that went to my running club, and he used to come to the running club every single week, and he would get his can of juice after the run, and there used to be folk in my running club would talk down to him saying, "Oh, you shouldn't drink that, it's got a lot of can." I thought, for God's sake, let him drink his Coke if he wants it, you know. Let him. He takes a little bit longer to understand things, but he's not daft. If that's what he wants, that's up to him. Why are you talking to him like that? And he used to have the exact change for the can machine, and he would go to the can machine and he would put his money in, and he'd done it for months and months. He always get his can of juice, and this particular week he was in a really bad mood, and folk didn't understand what was happening. He says, "That machine, it stole my money." And folk were like, "Oh, what's wrong, big man?" And he's just like, "My 2p. That can machine stole my 2p." And like, I could see that they gave him his money back and stuff like that, but he was really annoyed because he hadn't got his can of juice. And I could see they did the same thing every single week, and nobody else was understanding that he just wanted his can of juice. But it was a way ranting and raving, and I thought I really wanted other people, like the way that they reacted, were like, "Why is he being really weird?" And like, it's only 2p, it's only a can of juice. But it was really, really important to him. So I went away and I thought, I'm going to write a short story about it, which I did, but I changed the ending, and the end of the story was they give him a can of juice on the house, so he has 48p, and then this can of juice, and he turned around and said, "Oh, I don't like Diet Coke," you know. I thought that was really fun, and I remember because I showed him the story afterwards, and he didn't say anything, so I don't know if they liked it or not. Like, shit. I don't know whether they liked the story or not, or whether, but yeah, just it is funny how other people just sometimes can't see, because I completely saw him. I thought, yeah, that would annoy me as well if I did the same thing every week, and then it didn't happen.
Yeah, I think it's that being seen that is the important thing, isn't it? We're coming up to the end of our time together. That's really flown in really quickly. I feel like I could talk for another hour about all of this stuff. There's so much to talk about. Eli and Gray, what's next for you as writers? What are you up to at the moment?
I'm working on a crime novel, which is set in a sort of an adjacent world to my first novel. I have spent lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of time working on an outline because my mentor told me that it was not a great idea to have written a crime novel and get into near the end of the book and not know who did it. So I had to start from page 1 again, scrap everything. So it's going very, very slowly, but every day I get another wee breakthrough, and I'm like, yes, and I've got lots of spin-off stories from it, so that's really fun. Yeah.
It's exciting. And how about you, Gray?
So last year I got some funding from Creative Scotland, and I wrote a new spoken word theatre show, and like kind of performed like up to a work in progress performance of it. So yeah, it's probably not as much writing as now, but yeah, just developing that show. It's called Lycanthropy. It's about werewolves and transness and masculinity. Yeah, I'm working with a production company, Stories Untold, who are awesome. I'm really excited to work with. Yeah, just to develop the show. Hopefully we can get more funding to do that. Yeah, so Lycanthropy. And because I'm pretty obsessed with werewolves currently, doing a very similar project. It's actually based on the material that I couldn't fit into the show. Yeah, those so much, and some huge chunks of it had to go. I was really gutted about. But I applied for a commission with Glasgow Zine Library, and which I got, which is awesome.
Oh, cool.
I do make a zine also about trans werewolves, but on totally different topics. It kind of brings together trans werewolves and periods and fertility and things. So yeah, working on that zine with the Glasgow Zine Library, which I'm excited for, because I get to go in and use the library to sit and write and just read zines all day and call it research. Read zines and drink tea. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Yeah.
You had me at werewolves, to be honest, but all the rest of it is just made me more excited.
Like, I can do more projects on trans werewolves. There's so much to do here. Like, there's so many possibilities. Yeah, definitely not done with trans werewolves yet.
Excellent. Thank you both so much for this chat. It's been really interesting and illuminating, and I feel like I hope the audience have too, but I feel like I've sort of chimed with a lot of what you've both said, so it's been really exciting for me. Eli and Gray's books are available on the from the kind of book sponsor, the Book Nook. Have a website, have a link on the Paisley Book Festival website, which is paisleybookfest.com. And please fill in an online evaluation, which will be emailed to you after the event. It really helps to kind of put on events like this in the future. And please let us know what you think. Thank you so much.